This is a story from Turkey about Mullah Nasruddin. One day, Mullah Nasruddin needed a large pot, a cauldron, to do some cooking. You see, he and his wife had invited friends, and their pot had a hole in it, so they needed some help. So Nasruddin went to his neighbour and knocked on the door and said, "Dear friend, please could I borrow your cauldron? I will need it only for 1 or 2 days because we have friends coming over and I want to make a big special meal for them." "Of course," said his friend and neighbour, and brought out a large copper cauldron. Nasruddin took the cauldron home and he gave it to his wife, and the two of them cooked, and the friends came over and they had a lovely evening together. A couple of days later, Nasruddin took the cauldron back to his neighbour. But being a kindly man, he put into the pot a tiny little pot. When he handed the pot back to his neighbour, the neighbour said, "What is this, Nasruddin? Inside the pot there is another small pot." "Ah, you see," said Nasruddin, "when your pot was with me, it must have given birth, and I don't want to separate the mother from the baby, especially at such a young age." "Oh, I see," said the neighbour, and he eagerly took both his cauldron back as well as the small pot that was inside it. A few months later, Nasruddin knocked on his neighbour's door again and again asked to borrow the cauldron. And the neighbour rushed to his kitchen and got the cauldron as quickly as he possibly could, eager to know whether he might receive something else this time. He handed the pot to Nasruddin, who smiled and thanked him and returned home. But this time, it was not just weeks, but months had passed by, and the neighbour had not received his cauldron back. So the neighbour went to Nasruddin's house and knocked on the door, and Nasruddin welcomed him in. "My friend," said the neighbour, "Nasruddin, you have not given me back my cauldron." "Oh, I'm so sorry," said Nasruddin. "Something terrible happened." "What is that?" said the neighbour. "You see, when the cauldron was with me, it got sick and it died." "What do you mean?" said the neighbour. "A cauldron can't die." "I'm going to go to the Qadi to ask him to preside a judgment to work out what is the best thing to happen in this situation." So they went to the Qadi, the judge. The judge sat there. He scratched his chin. He listened to the two sides of the story. But when Nasruddin turned to him and said, "But you see, sir, if a cauldron can have a baby, then surely it can die." The judge roared with laughter, and the neighbour, he hung his head in shame. But Nasruddin was a kind man, and he gave the neighbour his cauldron back. And from that day, well, the neighbour was always grateful, and he was never greedy after that. So you see, we must all be careful when we receive things, not to expect too much. Goodbye.